So the Rebbe explained all the different advantages of this Beis Rabeinu ShebeBavel. That every shul, every yeshiva is a small scale Beis Hamikdash, and then there's one yeshiva or shul which is more than a small scale. That's like the actual substitute for the Beis Hamikdash of that generation. Which shul is it? So the Gemara says it varies from generation to generation. One generation could be this shul, a different generation could be another shul. What does it depend on? Because it's the shul that belongs to the nasi of the generation. So whoever is the nasi of the generation, that shul becomes the substitute for the Beis Hamikdash. So now on page 42, 43, the Rebbe starts speaking about how this is relevant to us and our generation. To apply all this to the Beis Apiza yesh levar kol hanal, the negay the Beis Rabeinu ShebeBavel b'doreinu zeh. So now we'll explain what's the Beis Rabeinu ShebeBavel in our generation, which is Beis HaKnesses, the Beis HaMedrash, the shul and the yeshiva of Kvei Gedusha Gemara v'Chomi Admin Sidareinu. The Rebbe was the nasi of our generation. I just want to say that throughout the years, the Rebbe began using a term to describe the previous Rebbe that was pretty much never used before. And that is, every time he mentioned his father-in-law, he would say, the Rebbe, my father-in-law, the nasi of the generation. Now, every Rebbe is considered a nasi. But the nasi usually meant a nasi of his community, of his group of Chassidim. The Rebbe, when he used the term nasi, said nasi of the generation. And I'm just wondering, what people were thinking, but the Rebbe always said that the Frierdiker Rebbe was the nasi of the generation. Not only that, but the Rebbe always added that the Rebbe Rashab, his father, was the nasi of his generation, and that the Rebbe Marash, his father, was the nasi of his generation, and that Tzemach Tzedek was the nasi of his generation. So on the surface, it sounds a little bit like, oh, well, you're taking it, for your family, everybody in your family, the heads of the generation. But again, we're not Chaz Hashem dealing with, just people, ordinary people, saying things, making assumptions. Every word that came out of the Rebbe's mouth was weighed very carefully. Every word that the Rebbe said was said with a lot of thought, and knowing exactly the impact it has on the world, what he did say, what he didn't say. So when the Rebbe said this, the Rebbe took full responsibility to say this clearly, which I don't know if it was so spelled out so clearly in earlier generations, definitely not used on a constant basis, and that is that the Rabbeim of Chabad, each one was the nasi of that generation. The fact that it's so many generations, by the way, we find a precedent to this also in the times of Gemara, in times of Hillel, for example, Hillel, who the famous Hillel and Shammai. It says that there were maybe, I think, 15 generations, father and son, and you looking for a Sicha? Here, we have extra copies. A father and a son, all the way down to about, I think, 15 generations. And the generation, it was the next generation. In fact, that is the way it's according to halacha. Like, Michlal, why do we usually choose, if a certain Rebbe passes on, why do we choose their son or their son-in-law? Why don't we just choose one of the Chassidim? Why do we stick to the family? So it's not because we want to honor him or because, family has a certain power. It's a pasuk in Chumash. It's one of the halachas in the Torah. And it says in the Torah that when a king passes away, then the leadership goes over to his son if he's worthy. If he's not worthy, then you look other places. Where's the pasuk? Well, I know which parsha it is. I have to look to see which pasuk it is. It's parsha Shoftim, where it says that whoever is a king, and it goes over as an inheritance to his children, and continues that way if he's worthy. That's why we find in many situations that it went to a son or a son-in-law. So these are the people that inherit. If he's not worthy, which means either in wisdom or in God, not the God-fearing person, then of course you look for someone else. Yeah.
This might be a lengthy question.
Probably is.
Yeah. We have our Rebbe, but other groups of Yidden have their Rebbe. So how do we know that our Rebbe is a Nasi?
So first of all, I don't think that other groups even claim that their Rebbe is the Nasi of the generation. So that makes it a little bit easier. Second of all, we're not basing it on us, that I think my Rebbe, we're basing it on the Rebbe's words. And the Rebbe doesn't say things just because it's my team, I want to make my team win. The Rebbe is telling us a fact that in every generation there's someone who's a Nasi of the whole generation. And in our generation, and meaning the previous Rebbe's generation, who was the Nasi? It was the Rebbe, my father-in-law. You can add, I'll get to you in a second, you can add that one of the things, the difference between a Nasi generation or not, is to observe this person's activities. Is he involved with his community? Thank you. Is he involved with his community, sort of exclusively? Or is he involved with every single community around the world? If a person's a tzaddik and he's only involved in his community, the only reason we can understand why is that, not because he's being selfish. Obviously, he doesn't see his shlichus to reach out to all Jews around the world. If another tzaddik does do that and sees that his shlichus, that alone implies that obviously his position is a different kind of position, it's more global. Yes.
I wanted to ask, like, when the Rabbi was referring to his father-in-law, the Free Rebbe, he was saying the Free Rebbe was like, and that's the his generation, or like in the when the Rebbe speaking, he's saying the Free Rebbe still Rebbe. Like, I'm just questioning, like, what unclear when the generation switches over. Like, I would think that if I could listen to the Rebbe, if the Rebbe saying, "Oh, my father-in-law, the Nazi of our generation," I would be like, "No, you're the Nazi now." Like.
Right, but the Rebbe always spoke that, but the Rebbe never said the words, "I am the Nasi of the generation." So it's true that that's how the Rebbe spoke. And in fact, very often the Rebbe would talk about himself by really speaking about the previous Rebbe. For example, next week will be Chayei Sarah. This is one of the Sichas we're going to learn. This is a Sich where the Rebbe spoke the last time to all the shluchim that came from the shlichus, and that they're coming. They're not next week, they're coming 2 weeks. So that week was Chayei Sarah. How did the Rebbe begin? That we have here all the shluchim of the Rebbe, my father-in-law. You look at the crowd, most of them were not the age of the previous Rebbe's time. They're all from the Rebbe's time. But he refers to them as the Rebbe, my father-in-law. Tell you a personal story. I went on shlichus to Australia in 1967. There was 6 of us, and we went to Melbourne to study yeshiva there. It was the first time this thing happened. After that, became a regular thing that the Rebbe would send bachrim to different yeshivas in different places in the world, but that was the first time. And we went into the Rebbe's room for a bracha. And the Rebbe not only gave a bracha, he gave a whole Sicha. It took about 20 minutes. Thank God someone had a small tape recorder, so we have a recording of it. But how did the Rebbe say? What did the Rebbe say? The Rebbe said that you're going to these were the Rebbe's words in Yiddish. You go into yeshiva. The place is called, the yeshiva there is called Ahole Yosef Yitzchak, the tent of Yosef Yitzchak. Obviously, it was named after the previous Rebbe. The previous Rebbe was one of the first sent shluchim to Australia in the 1940s. When Lubavitch came out of war in Russia, They came to DP camps in Germany and other places, and everyone wanted to know where to go. And the Frierdiker Rebbe was like the commander in chief. You go to France, you go to America, you go to England, you go to Canada, you go to Australia. So he sent different students to Australia, and they're the ones who started Yiddishkeit and spread Yiddishkeit in Australia. So the name of the yeshiva is Oleh Yosef Yitzhak, and the Rebbe said, you're being sent to participate and be part of the institutions there on the name of my father-in-law. And that's why we're sending those who saw my father-in-law and heard from my father-in-law. And then he added, and there are many details to this. We were all young and not the age that we were able to see the Frierdiker Rebbe or even hear Sicha of the Rebbe. But those who heard his word, those who saw the father-in-law and heard from him. How did we interpret that to mean that the Rebbe, first of all, the Rebbe once said this openly by Fabrengen, that all I am, it's my father-in-law that's doing everything. I'm just the hands and feet through which he is accomplishing things. So the Rebbe always looked at it as one, and the Rebbe, in a sense, when he wanted to speak about himself, he spoke about his father-in-law. So the words of the Rebbe are that he's the Nasi of the generation. But then we have to understand, we have to take it from there. So first of all, let's preface. My father-in-law did what? Yeah. The Rebbe, my father-in-law, had a saying that Lubavitch experienced 10 exiles. Reading from the paragraph in Hebrew, the Hegden, Pisgah of the Rebbe, my father-in-law, that Lubavitch experienced 10 exiles, which means for many years, over 100 years, Lubavitch was the headquarters of this Chassidus, and that's where Chassidus was revealed and spread to other places. But then they had to leave Lubavitch just during World War I, and they went to a city called Rostov. And then from Rostov, they went to Petersburg. From Petersburg, they went to outside of Russia, they went to Latvia. From Latvia, they went to Poland. And in Latvia and Poland, they were in different places. And eventually, they came to America. In America itself, so they finally came to this place, which became the final permanent location. And this is Beis Rabeinu, this is the shul and the yeshiva, Merkez shel Lubavitch, the center of Lubavitch for the next 10 years, which was the last 10 years of the Frierdiker Rebbe in this world. Then he adds one more thing. I see this in the Hebrew and in the English, and this is a very important thing. The Gam li'ach is the last words of this paragraph, of this page. Gam la'achris talkusa, even after his passing, kedusha le'zaza memkaima. This is a quote that's found in other sources of the Torah, that kedusha doesn't leave its original place, which means what?
On the contrary, it rises in height.
Right, the rise to the highs, but a thing that had in kedusha never really leaves; it's always there. And therefore, even after the passing, the kedusha is there. Adarabba, to the contrary, not only is there, but Mailam Kedush, it's even more than it was before. And it's interesting, in the footnote, the Rebbe makes reference to something we're doing in Chitas right now. Right now, what are we doing in Chitas of Tanya? There was someone called Rabbi Menachem Mendel Hordog that passed away. He lived in Eretz Yisrael. He was one of the most senior students of the Mazurcha Magid. In fact, even the Alter Rebbe himself sort of looked towards him as a teacher, even though they were colleagues. And when he passed away, the Alter Rebbe wrote these two letters in Egeres HaKodesh. One is 27, the other one is 28, about the passing of Tzaddik. And what the Alter Rebbe writes, you learned it yesterday in Chitas, is that even after his passing, he's here and he's with us, and his life is still continues, because his life is not physical, meat and potatoes. His life is Avos Hashem, Yiras Hashem, and Amunas Hashem. And these things continue now, just like before, and even more than before. Yeah. So basically, the Rebbe says that whatever 770 is hasn't changed. If anything, even after the passing of the Friedrich Rebbe, it continues and continues even more than before. It's very interesting that all the years, this Sicha was given out literally a few months before the Rebbe had the stroke and stopped speaking. But all the years, the Rebbe never ever gave a Sicha to explain what is the deeper significance of 770. And only then he did. And he also said these words that after the passing, it doesn't Has Hashem go away, it continues, and even in a greater measure than before. Page 44, 45. So the same would apply to the whole Indian of Golos in general. In our generation, most Yidden, Reiv Minyan, Reiv Binyan of Bnei Yisrael, which means most Yidden of Golos, where are they? In America. In fact, this is one of the reasons why the Nasi Hadar, Chai, why was he here for 10 years? And from here, he spread Torah and Yiddishkeit to the rest of the world, through his students and through his shluchim. In other words, being that this is the place where the majority of Yidden live in the world, therefore he saw this as being the place where he should be, and from here we should spread Yiddishkeit to the Yidden that are here and to the Yidden to the rest of the world. One of the questions that the Rebbe was asked many times is, why doesn't he go to Israel? And the Rebbe never answered that 100% clearly. The answer, though, seems to be that, like it says over here, this is where most of the Jews live, and this is the most influential place in the world. So therefore, this is the place where we need to be. The Rebbe did say once, a Yid should be not where he wants to be, but where he is needed to be. And that's the reason that from here we have to spread Torah and mitzvahs to the rest of the world. Now we learned before in the Gemara, it said, "V'chol makom shegolu Yisrael," wherever Yidden went to Golus, Shechina imam, the Shechina went with them. So if that's the case, when they went to America, to Bavel, the Shechina went to Bavel. So in this Golus, where most Yidden live together with the Nasi Hadar in America, that means that the Shechina is also here in America. But just like the Gemara says about Bavel, okay, we know the Shechina is in Bavel, but where in Bavel is the Shechina? And the Gemara answered, the Beis Rabeinu ShebeBavel, same here. Where in America is the Shechina? Heicha? And the answer is Beis Rabeinu, because that's similar to the shul that the Gemara talks about, Shanasa Migdash V'Yashav Sham. The shul that is really the Beis Migdash of Yerushalayim, that left Yerushalayim and made this journey and came and arrived to be in Bavel in these shul. So again, every shul in America and every shul around the world has in it the Shechina in a smaller scale. But there's one shul that has in it the Shechina in a scale which is like the substitute of the Beis HaMikdash. So in those days it was that shul, and in our days it's this shul. That's how the Rebbe explains it. And why specifically did it turn out that the Hashgacha Pratis could be here in America? The reason behind this is in this generation, which is the last generation of Golus, and our generation is also the first generation of Gula, we are completing and finishing all the activities of our forefathers that were done throughout Golus. And our avodah is to make this land of Golus, which is the lowest land, to become Eretz Yisrael, and specifically a place like America, which is Chatzi Kader HaTachton, the lower part of the globe. Shesham Shabbai Lahaya Matan Torah. Why is it lower? There was no Matan Torah there. And by elevating that, everything gets elevated. This needs to be explained. And there's a number of places where the Rebbe goes into this and talks about what is the advantage and what's so unique about America. So America is referred to as the lower part of the globe. What does it mean lower? A globe is a globe. Every part is lower. Depends which way you look at it. So we're looking at it from the point of view of Torah. The Torah was given at Har Sinai. Har Sinai, Eretz Yisrael, Bavel, where the great yeshivas were, all that is the higher part of the globe. And this part of the globe, in reference to that, is considered the lower part of the globe. And it says here that in the lower part of the globe, there was no Matan Torah. What does that mean? It doesn't mean Chas v'Shalom that the Torah doesn't apply. There's no place in the world the Torah doesn't apply. But it means the Torah wasn't given there. Meaning that when you're in a room and you study Torah, basically by you studying Torah in the room, you're transforming the room that it becomes a holier room. There's a medrash where it says, just to give an example, medrash that says that Rabbi Lazar HaGadol used to teach Torah and he sat on a rock. In those days, that's how he was. He sat on something higher so the students could all see him, but it was a rock. Rabbi Yeshua, who was his student, walked into the Beis Medrash and he walked over and he started to kiss the rock. And he said, this rock is like Har Sinai. And the one who sits on the rock is like the Luchis, which is the ark and the Luchis that were in the Beis Hamikdash. In other words, being that this Rebbe Lazar HaGadol was the source of Torah in that generation, so he is like the Luchis, and the rock is like Har Sinai, where the Torah came from. So if a person studies Torah, you're basically transforming that place that you're studying. What about the room next door or 10 rooms away? There's definitely a ripple effect on the whole world. But the main effect is in where it's happening and whatever's close in location to that place. So when the Torah was given to Har Sinai. So therefore, the effect of Torah and everything else was primarily on that half of the globe, but not on the other half of the globe. Especially places like America, where for centuries there wasn't even any Torah mitzvahs there. Nobody did Torah mitzvahs. So the place was really unrefined. So the fact that we're learning Torah in such a place, in a way means we're learning Torah, we're learning Chassidus, we're doing mitzvahs in a place which is the lowest place of the world. You follow that part? Now, what's the advantage of doing it in the lowest place of the world? There's another point. And the other point is like this. It says in Chassidus that when we do Torah mitzvahs in this physical world, we're bringing an elevation to all the spiritual worlds. Why? Because this is at the bottom and all those worlds are on top. So imagine if you have a building and you lift the bottom part of the building only, just the bottom part, and you lift it. Once you lift the bottom, then all the floors that are on top get lifted. So once you lift this physical world, you're automatically lifting all the spiritual worlds that are sort of on top of it. And that's why when you do mitzvahs, you elevate not only our world, but it brings elevation and it brings spirituality to all the spiritual worlds. Based on that principle, so in this physical world itself, when you go to the bottom of the physical world, it's the same thing. You go to the lowest place and you lift that. When you lift that part, which is the lowest place, you're automatically lifting the whole structure, which is the whole physical world. And through that, all the worlds together. So therefore, as we're getting closer to Mashiach, so the time has come that you have to finally prepare every part of the world for Mashiach. So therefore, Hashem arranged that Yidden should end up in Golos in a place like America, which is the lowest place of the globe from a spiritual perspective. And by lifting that lowest place, it lifts all the places, and lifting all the places lifts all the world. That's what it's saying here. By elevating the lowest places, we automatically elevate all the other places in the Gentile lands and all the other countries of the world. So even though Eretz Yisrael is the holiest land, but the way to elevate all the other countries of the world mainly is by doing Torah and mitzvahs and spreading teaching the Chassidus, not in the lowest place, because that's all the way in the bottom. And when that's lifted, it lifts everything else that's on top. So in America itself, and in this place where we are, this is the function of Beis Rabeinu, which is in this lowest place in the world. Just like the Beis Hamikdash was a place that light emanated from there to the whole world, so too here light emanates from here to the entire world. To make and accomplish that the whole world, the whole entire world, ad lepinachi nidachas, even the most remote corner at the end of the world, turn it around and transform it, and it becomes Eretz Yisrael. That's what it means when it says Asida Eretz Yisrael shenispashel b'chol haratzos. In the future, we'll see how all the other countries become transformed into Eretz Yisrael. But Asida Yisrael sheshtar b'chol Eretz Yisrael, Yishalayim, and then Yishalayim will transform all of Eretz Yisrael. Like we said before, Sheba Yukva Kol Batik Nasis Medrashis. שבכל העולם כולם מחובר לבית המקדש וגאולה מדינה שלמה עד המשיח צדקנו נשיא הדר שהוא המשיח וגאולה שבדר. Whoever the נשיא הדר is the Mashiach of the generation. וגם זה עיקר שהוא הנשיא the Teres Chassidus. He's also the נשיא of the teachings of Chassidus. אשר ידי זה, ידי הפצה החוצה by spreading it out, till you spread it out to all corners of the world, this brings Bias Mashiach Tzidkenu. So based on this, we understand Goydel Ha'ilui, the Beis Rabeinu, Migdash Ma'ata Iker B'Golos Achar. The greatness of this shul, which is Beis Rabeinu ShebeBavel, that this is greater, and specifically in this last generation of Golos, because through this we have to bring Gula to the rest of the world. So everything you said before, in the beginning of the Sicha, that happened to those shuls that were in Bavel, the Rabbi says the same applies to 770, which is based on Rabeinu ShebeBavel in our generation. In fact, that's the name of this whole kuntras. Right? It's Beis Rabeinu ShebeBavel, that's what it's called. What? The Holy Temple in Transit is, I think, what the translator made his own title. But the Rebbe's title was Beis Rabeinu ShebeBavel. So remember, I told you, if anyone disagrees when it says that they can only disagree with one thing. And the one thing, because everything else is in Gemara. Only they can disagree and say they don't agree that this shul is the shul of the Nasi Adar. They think someone else is the Nasi Adar. That's definitely what someone could say. But what it says about this shul, whoever it is, the Nasi Adar has these and these and these advantages, all those things are in Gemara. A reference to the shul that we're in Bavel, and the Gemara says the same would apply to every generation. And here in the last part, we're getting close at least to the last part, the Rebbe brings out more of a connection between the Friedrich Rebbe and Mashiach. Yesh L'Hisek. She'inyan Zeh, it's also hinted in the name. Rabbeinu, our Rebbe, again, the Rebbe always refers to our Rebbe, his Rebbe is the Friedrich Rebbe. Beis Shmois of his two names, they both of them allude to Gula. The first name is Yosef. And there's a pasuk, it says, by Yemahu, in that day, which means when Mashiach comes, Yosef Hashem Sheinis Yodei, Liknes Eshar Amei, Hashem's hand will sort of stretch out again to gather the remnants of his people. Asher Yishar Me'asher U'Mitzrayim, those that will remain from Assyria and from the godless of Assyria and the godless of Egypt. Me'i Ayam, those that are coming from the islands of the sea. V'asav Nitzchei Yisrael, he will gather together all the Jews who are scattered all over in the countries of Yehuda, and he'll gather them together from Arba Campus Arts, from all four corners of the world. And how did the pasuk begin? V'yemahu Yosef, Hashem Shenis Yodai. So that's the name of Yosef. Where do we see a connection between Yitzchak and Geula? There's a pasuk that says, "Az Yomali Yitzchak Pinu." Then, when Mashiach comes, we'll be able to have our mouths filled with laughter. But we can't really laugh fully until Mashiach comes. And Yitzchak is the name of Yitzchak. Az Daikel Asad Lavet Kashem Yitzchak Yatovim. The Gemara says, when Mashiach comes, he's either going to say to Yitzchak, "You specifically are our father." And it says that Abraham will be on his right, and Yaakov will be on his left, and Yitzchak will be in the middle, and we'll tell Yitzchak, "You're it. You're the main one." So, not to be, don't feel bad for everybody else. Don't worry. There's certain advantages that Abraham has on the other two. There's certain advantages that Yaakov has on the other two. When it comes to Mashiach, it says that Yitzchak, which is on the surface, from a Hasidic perspective, they should really raise a question. Yitzchak is Gevura, and Mashiach is all about Chesed, only goodness and kindness and happiness and brachas, to the point that we'll be drunk from joy, not from wine, from joy we'll be drunk. And how could we associate with Yitzchak, which is all about Gevura? So there's many Maimorim that go into it, but in one word, Yitzchak means to laugh. The biggest pleasure that Hashem has is when you take this Gashmizik world and you transform it into Kedusha. So when will that be revealed, that the Gashmias, everything in the physical world, is transformed into Kedusha? That'll be when Yitzchak, that'll be when Mashiach comes. And that'll give Hashem the greatest pleasure ever, which means the greatest pleasure really comes out as a result of Gevura, that there was a world of concealment, a world of Golus, a world of suffering, a world that was distant from Hashem, a world that was filled with Gevura, and that world will be transformed to become a Mashiach world. That will ultimately give Hashem the greatest pleasure. And that's why that'll be the time we'll point to Yitzchak and say, "You are our father," because that's what it was all about. That these things which are concealment should be transformed into a revelation. Then the Rebbe goes into the number of 770. Remember we said this morning that a casual conversation, and I'm talking about the number 770. But by the Rebbe, it has spiritual significance, the fact that it's called by that name. And he says the address of this building is 770. And not only it's an address, but this became the name of Beis Rabeinu in the mouths of people. But people don't say the shul here. It's 770. Going 770. I'm coming for 770. Or you're in 770. This looks like 770. It's a picture of 770. Everything is 770. What does this number represent? Mispar Zeh is the gematria Paratzta. 770 is the gematria of the word Paratzta. And what is that associated with? It says by Yaakov Avinu, Uparatzta Yama Vakedna V'Safena V'Negra. And you will be spread out to the west, to the south, and to the north, and to the east. Sheremes, I have to show you this. Later we'll see more about it inside. This is another pasuk that has the Rebbe says Paratzta is 770. What happened to the Vav? It says Ufaratzta. This is going to show you. It goes together with another word in the Chumash. And that word is actually Paratzta without a Vav. It's a little bit later in the Chumash. We're going to learn the Parsha Vayeshev, where it says that Yehuda had two sons. He had twins. Look at Pasuk 27. And it came about at the time she was giving birth, behold, there were twins in her womb. And it came about that she gave birth, and this infant stretched out his hand So the midwife took and bound a crimson thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." And it came about that he drew back his hand, and his brother emerged. And the brother went ahead of him, starting up right over there. And he said, "With what strength you have strengthened yourself?" And the word strength is the word paratz. So therefore he said, "Your name is Peretz." In the Hebrew, "Vatayma ma paratz alecha Peretz, vayikashmei Peretz." This name is significant because we know Mashiach comes from David HaMelech, and David HaMelech is from the tribe of Yehuda. From Yehuda itself, which son does David HaMelech come from? From Peretz. So Paratzta here, or the other person, Uparatzta, they're both referring to the origin of Mashiach, who is called Peretz, and also Mashiach. Peretz also means to break barriers. Like if you heard the expression, Simcha Peretz Geder. Simcha, joy breaks barriers. Mashiach will break barriers. It'll be a world that we've never known before in terms of the goodness and the kindness and the happiness and the Torah and the mitzvahs and the peace and the nations of the world. So therefore, in fact, there's another pasuk which we're going to have later in the Sicha, where it says Mashiach is called Peretz. He's a breaker of barriers, because what he's going to do is going to break barriers in all areas. So this alludes to the fact that the light emanates from this house towards the four directions of the world. And in a manner that breaks through limitations, elevating all, that's what paratz means, to break limitations, break barriers, elevating all four directions of the world to the level of Eretz Yisrael. So the gematria of the word of Ratzta is 770, indicating that this is the place. The Gashmis, what happened? How did they get this place? I don't know if you know the story behind it. But actually, the whole block signed the petition that they shouldn't be able to move it on the block. This is 1940. Crown Heights was one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Brooklyn. All these homes belong to doctors and lawyers and professional people. And now the greenhorns want to come from the other country. They're going to ruin the neighborhood, bring down the value of the homes and everything. So they actually signed the petition that they don't want the Lubavitcher Rebbe moving in on the block. These are all Jews, unfortunately. So how did it happen? It happened because the next door neighbor, who was a dentist, he refused to sign the document. These are people coming from Europe, which is on fire, and they're coming to America, and I should sign a document. I'm not welcoming them on my block. I'm not going to do that. And because he didn't sign, it wasn't valid, because he needed the signature of every member of the block. And for all the years, the Rebbe was very grateful to him. The Rebbe actually used him as his dentist. The Rebbe spoke to him. And his building, which is now next door to 770, that became the Rebbe's personal library. Yeah, if you ever went, or you will go this year, we usually make a trip to the library. But anyway, the reason why Begashmi 770 was chosen is the Frierdiker Rebbe in 1940 was already in a wheelchair. And this building has an elevator, which was perfect for the Frierdiker Rebbe. And that was Begashmi. The Ruchnius, it means that this was the place that was designated for this purpose since Hashem created the world. And these were just the reasons, the Gashmi is why it fit in. It was available, and they moved in, and the rest is history. Okay, we'll continue from here the next time, and we'll probably finish the Sicha by then. Yep. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.
Good job.
Okay.
Might get use it well. Right. So what was the
What was what? That shows how the origin, the first the person that Mashiach comes from is parents, and it's called parents, and she used the words Lama Paratzta Lecha Peretz. That's the Gemara is 7. No, there's the word Paratzta, the Gemara is 777.